Hey folks, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Natasha and I do book things here. Today's video is going to be my November wrap-up, and November was great for reading. Bad for mental health, great for reading. You can't have them all, but you know, big thanks to Lala or Kayla from Books and Lala, because I did Lalathon, which she recommends her favorite books, and it was from the beginning of November, and I continued that all the way through the month of November and basically did Lala month. I think something like 20 of her favorite books in my current TBR shelves, and I officially had my best month of reading the entire year because of it. You guys are gonna see in a second that all the books that I read were great. Basically, I didn't have any bad books, so I completely owe it to her for creating Lalathon and letting me have a wonderful month of reading. I ended up reading 9 books in the month of November. A couple of those were audiobooks, so I didn't read as much as I would have liked to, but I read some really great books, so I'm happy with it. You know, I'll say it time and time again, November is always a rough month for me, mental health wise. I'm feeling much better right now, so that's good. So yeah, I read a total of 9 books this month. It's 3,553 pages, so it equals out to about 118 pages a day, which is, you know, pretty good. Of that, I read 6 YA books, 3 adult books, 7 female authors and 2 male authors, and my genres, which I love to talk about because, again, these are all Lala's favorite books, and they're pretty, like, different and diverse, and I feel like I was able to mood read these books even though they were sort of a condensed TBR, if that makes sense. So we had a contemporary, a sci-fi, a fantasy, a contemporary, a dystopian, a mystery, a sci-fi, and a contemporary. So, you know, so some different stuff in there. So I was really able to pick and choose the stuff that I wanted to read, which is fun. Yeah, so you guys want me to get into star ratings? Because here's where it gets wild. I had 0 1-star books this month. I had 0 2-star books this month. I had 0 3-star books this month. And I had 4 4-star books and 5 5-star books. And so I think I made a joke about how, like, I just so desperately wanted to have a month where my overall monthly rating was like a 4.5. That's exactly what it was this month out of the books that I read. All 4s and 5s, not a bad book this month. A couple that I had slight issues with, which are the 4 stars, but even then, an absolutely amazing month of reading. It was just so fun to sort of like almost wrap up the year in a way, even though there is no in December, I'm aware, but almost to wrap up the year with a couple of new favorites, so yay. My publication dates, which I do keep track of, 2018, 18 again, 12, 11, 17, 14, 2018, 14 and 17. So I did manage to get in 3 2018 releases in there, which I always try to do each month. So the first 4-star book that I read, again, I'm going to start with my lowest and go highest, but like it really doesn't matter. So whatever. The first 4-star book that I read was The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I so badly wanted this to be 5 stars, and I thoroughly enjoyed it though. This is so slow burn, atmospheric. Yeah, it was lovely. I absolutely loved it. My worry going into this is that it would go a little bit too fantasy for me to enjoy it. That's pretty much the reason why I didn't end up giving it a 5-star. This follows a night circus. It appears in the evening. They describe these like wonderful tents and smells and aromas. And that's a smell too. Scenes and people and atmosphere, and I ate this just with a spoon. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. It's very slow burn. Not a lot happens plot-wise in this, and I was completely okay with that. It did lose me a little bit on some of the fantasy elements where I I guess sort of tuned out a little bit. That's why it wasn't a full 5. But I absolutely adored this, and I would say happily that if this was to be a perfect book for me, it would be The Night Circus set in modern day with a little less fantasy, and it would be probably my favorite book of all time. One part of this that maybe some other people might have overlooked, in the acknowledgements, the author actually credits Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, which is a scent company that I have hundreds perfume oils from, and in my earlier days of YouTube back on my makeup channel, for those of you who don't know, I have one of those, I used to review scents by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. So the fact that I read this whole book and was like, oh my god, like the smells are so accurate and perfect. The fact that the author credits Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab for stuff like that, I absolutely lost my shit when I finished reading that in the acknowledgements, because it was just like, yes, this is why I personally was so drawn to the descriptions in this book. Scent is just hugely important to me. I very sensitive nose, and then I can also, like, takes me back to memory like that. Definitely saw that a lot in this book. Yeah, if you guys even want to know a little bit more about me personally, I absolutely love fairs, carnivals, circuses, stuff like that. One thing I really liked is that there wasn't a lot of animal use in this, and because that's the circus that I remember. When I was 19, I ended up going to literally probably the Night Circus, and it was called Carnival Lune Bleu, and I met some amazing characters who are still my friends now. My friend Scott McKelland actually has one of Canada's only sideshows, and he is a performer and does sideshow, freak show, stuff like that. And again, as expected, I read this and I was scared to read this because I knew that, like, this probably would be one of my favorite books. Anyway, without going on too long, it totally was. It brought me right back to some really good memories. The descriptions are excellent. The only reason it wasn't a 5 is it, again, lost me a little bit in the fantasy elements, but overall, if you like circuses and you like slow burn, not a lot happens books, which I love sometimes, it's just so calming to not have every scene be action. I fucking love this. Loved it. The best circus book that I have read thus far ever. So, loved it. This is going to be such a positive video, by the way, because I just loved all these books. So, yay. So, moving on. The next 4-star book that I absolutely loved was a dystopian. That is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. So this book actually takes place not far from me. This takes place in Toronto, which, again, a lot of the descriptions of the places in this book I can actually relate to, or I at the very least know exactly where they are, which is really cool. This is a really interesting book. This follows a group of theater people, give or take, and interesting characters who make a post-apocalyptic, post-pandemic really. So it's basically, there was a super flu, wiped out, you know, 99.5% of the population. It starts off very similar, honestly, to The Stand by Stephen King, which is one of the reasons why I really like this. It's, you know, flu-like sickness wipes everyone out. The people who are surviving are sort of telling their stories and are traveling in this Shakespeare production, like caravan kind of thing, and they put on these wonderful shows and stuff. It does go off a little bit and follow certain characters here and there, how they ended up where they're at. Yeah, this was just great, man. Like, I'm just realizing that I really like dystopian books, like especially books that are heavily like there's a pandemic flu-like thing. I'm realizing that those are some of my favorite books because it shows sort of what humans do in the fall of that. There's a reason why I absolutely love The Stand by Stephen King. I saw a lot of similarities between that and this, and I'm just realizing that I just like dystopian worlds like that, or like, you know, rebuilding society after the fact and sort of what human beings do with that. Again, fascinating. There's so many little moments in this that will stick with me. Like, the one character in this said, you know, do you remember a time that fridges were used for anything other than shelving? And, you know, that kind of sort of just made me think of, like, how much we just are so used to opening the fridge, there's electricity and cold food, that how soon after we lose something like that would we just use a fridge for storage? I don't know. So little things like that are why I love dystopian novels. And yeah, the reason why I gave this a 4 is because it wraps up, sort of just wraps up You know, like there's not like really any sort of big grand ending. I don't honestly remember the ending. Is that weird? A little interesting. Like it's just, I feel like you follow these characters and then it just sort of stops. But that journey of following the characters I really like. So next 4-star is the only thriller in this group. I wish I would have read more thrillers because, you know, Lala like absolutely loves thrillers. But this is the one that I got to, and that is Emma in the Night by Wendy Walker. And this follows a girl who comes back after her and her sister have been missing for about 3 years, stumbles back into their family with their mom and stepdad and dad and whatever, and she sort of tells a story about how, like, what has happened to the both of them. And through that you're learning about family, and there's another character as well that's the I guess investigator, forgive me, psychologist, sorry, who works along with the investigators to find out sort of the lies and the twist and the secrets behind this family and this girl who's come back and her sister who is still missing. And I like the twist and I like the twist and I like the turns, and I liked the discussions of narcissism within a family. I thought that was really interesting. The only reason I gave this a 4 though is, I know a lot of people said like, the twist. I don't know what it is with thrillers, if I'm just somebody who always assumes the worst, or if I can always sort of see them coming. Like, I'll admit when I don't see a twist coming, and there was one in here that I didn't see, but the one that like led up to that I did, and so it wasn't completely, oh my god, like I am so shocked. The ride that it took me on was really good anyway, so that's one of the reasons why I gave it a 4. So if you're looking for like a family-based thrillery kind of drama book, I do recommend this. It's pretty good. It's one of the weirder books that I read, and again the last 4-star one of the month. That was More Than This by Patrick Ness, and this I ended up actually categorizing as a sci-fi. I thought it would be more of a surrealist book, but it really ends up kind of more of a sci-fi. This is truly strange, and for a lot of this I didn't know what was going on, and then it sort of all clicked at the end, and as you sort of just discover more and more. It starts with a boy who has drowned and has died, and follows him in what you're sort of led to believe is maybe the afterlife, maybe not. And you meet this interesting cast of characters. He's trying to figure out what this world is, what his role is there, what has happened to him, why, like, is this sort of an afterlife, is this purgatory, is this some other distant universe? Yeah, without basically giving too much away, like, as to what goes on with that, that's kind of what this talks about. It talks about grief, loss, a lot of emotions that have to do heavily with like suicide and death and grief and loss, basically all of that stuff packed into a really weird surreal book. And I wasn't sure what I was getting into when I opened this. I didn't read too heavily about really what it was about, and it was surprisingly really good and opened my eyes to a lot of discussions and a lot of ideas about all of those topics. Yeah, I really actually ended up caring for the main character quite a bit. But just know this isn't your standard sort of coming of age story. It's very different, very weird, but I highly recommend it if you like a little bit of a different coming of age story. To be honest, this actually really reminded me a lot of Sean David Hutchinson's work, where it's sort of a modern day contemporary with weird elements. This is like if you took those weird elements and tried to make it modern day. Hopefully that makes sense. So I have a feeling like if you liked sort of We Are the Ants, that you'd actually maybe like this like as well, only this has a little bit more science fiction in it. So yeah, that's my suggestion. Dylan, if you haven't read this, I think you would like this maybe. So the next book is my first 5-star book, and this is one that was heavily suggested to me by a lot of people. I originally asked Kayla, I was like, what book out of all of these should I read first? She's like, this one. And I'm like, okay. So it was the first book that I ended up reading, and wow, what a book. Okay, that is Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. You guys may have seen a lot of people talk about this because it is so fantastic. This follows Mara, and her brother Owen, and she basically is, they're twins, and they're very close until her good friend reports her brother of sexual assault, and it follows wanting to believe your friend and believing your friend, and then wanting to not think, you know, your brother did this kind of thing, and all of the turmoil back and forth about that, the family turmoil about that, the brother and sister relationship turmoil, the turmoil between her and her friend. At the same time, she herself is dealing with a lot of past trauma, past emotions, past relationships, that sort of thing. It's beautifully woven together and beautifully written, and is so realistic in what people would discuss and talk about and think and feel. A lot of confusion about, like, how should I feel, who should I believe, and it's beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful. Everyone should read it if you can handle those sort of subjects. It's obviously a little bit darker, so just know that if you yourself have been put through any of those scenarios or anything, maybe tread lightly with this, but it's probably up there in the best YA that I've read this year, definitely, and maybe ever, because it is absolutely fantastic. So yes, read this. Next 5 stars, bit of a different take. One that I watched the movie before I read the book, and I was really doubtful about the book living up to how much I liked the movie. That is The Martian by Andy Weir. Gave this 5 stars. Why? Because this book pretty much is the movie. And I love the movie. It's one of my favorite, like, sci-fi movies. I think it was so well done and funny and snarky. Mark Watney is just such a great character in general, and his snark. Love this. For those of you who don't know what this is about, this follows a guy who accidentally gets stranded on Mars by his team, and he wakes up on Mars and has to survive until they are able to get to him or not. And it follows him being very, very snarky. His personality is great. It has one of the best opening lines for a book of all time. It says, first line, chapter 1, "I'm pretty much fucked. That's considered my opinion. Fucked." I love this book. My level of humor, the kind of sci-fi I like, with a little bit of, like, actual science thrown in, I like it. And if all sci-fi could be written with this sort of, like, wit and humor level, I would be reading a hell of a lot more sci-fi. And again, a book that, despite the ending that I already knew, kept me, like, thrilled the whole time. And also there's a lot of potatoes. I wished for more potatoes, but the discussion of the potatoes I loved. Yeah, I have just such a soft spot for the potatoes in this book and the movie that I was happy to see what I consider to be the secondary character in this book, which are the potatoes. Yeah, definite 5 star. The potatoes deserve it. Next 5 star, I can't remember if this was actually in Lala's favorite or not, or it was just I think it was the book I was reading before we got into November. But anyway, I'm gonna talk about it anyway. This is Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. I did have the pleasure of meeting her, and she signed my book. Ooh, I'll show you. There you go. It says, "To Natasha, thanks for the book, love." I actually got to talk to her a little bit, and she is a wonderful human being, by the way. Absolutely total sweetheart. I sat in Ottawa, in my city, in a panel where she talked about diversity in YA, and she had, like, just a lot of important things to say, and she's lovely. And so I immediately went home, read this book, listened to it on audiobook, and then actually read the ending because my audiobook got sent back to the library, which happens to me all the time. This book, where do I start with this? This is hard-hitting. This is very, very hard-hitting. This follows a young girl, she's about 12, named Claudia, and she's best friends with this girl named Monday, and she, you know, has grown up with her, thinks they're best friends, and then all of a sudden, when she goes back to school, Monday's not there. Is trying to figure out what happened to her friend, why Monday is not coming to school, and she's not there. It's just such a good look at you know, being at the age of 12 where you don't have a lot of control over what you can do, like you still are under teachers' influence and parents' influence, and you're trying to get answers, and people aren't listening to you or not acknowledging what you're saying might be a concern. And it follows her on this journey to find her friend. And let me just tell you, I did not expect what was happening in the ending of this to happen, and I full-on cried on the bus. Listening to it on audio, I had to just full-on cry, redo my makeup before I went into work because this book shattered me. It's based, like I was talking to Tiffany about it, it's based off of a couple stories. I don't know how necessarily true they are, but it's based off a couple stories that she researched, and it's so sad and so beautifully told. And yeah, read this. Without getting too much into it, just know that you will probably cry reading this. I definitely did, and it is just a beautiful, beautiful book. And yeah, read it, please. It's 5 stars. Loved it. Next book, again, 5 stars. Beautiful book. This was on Lala's list as well. This is Everything Beautiful Is Not Ruined by Danielle Young-Allman. Again, I got to meet her as well, actually at the same spot that I met Tiffany D. Jackson, so that ended up being really cool. She signed the art copy I have, and it's To Natasha, Love Your Style, which is really cute. I listened to this on audiobook actually this month, and this again, absolutely wrecked me, and again I cried in public. You can see a theme here of hard-hitting YA this month. Yeah, I cried at a lot of things this month. It's fine, it's fine. This follows a teenager named Ingrid and her journey going to like a wilderness camp. And while she's there, she's writing letters back to her mom, who is an opera singer who has lost her voice and is dealing with how she feels about that. And Ingrid is at this camp and she's writing back to her mom, and it follows a lot of family drama, self-discovery and growth, dealing with depression and sort of creeping thoughts and things. And again, it's beautifully woven, beautifully written, hard-hitting. At one point while listening to this, I'm not going to spoil anything, but a particular discovery around the end of this book, I actually out loud went, huh? Because it sucked the life out of me when I discovered what was happening. I went, huh? You know, that's great. Yeah, this was beautiful, and I recommend this to everybody. Everybody should read this. If you haven't read it yet, you should read it. It's great. And then lastly, last 5-star book that I read in the month of November was one that was heavily suggested again to me by a lot of people, and that is A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard. I read this basically because I knew that there was deaf representation, and I'm hard of hearing. For the guys who might be new to my channel, I wear hearing aids. I don't have them in right now, but I am partially deaf in both ears, and I wear hearing aids, and I'm trying to find more books with that sort of representation. While I'm not fully deaf, I don't know ASL. I want to learn. I know the very, very basics of ASL. I want to learn, and I want more hard of hearing deaf representation in my books. I want to read more of that because it's something that's like personal to me and typically hits me in a weird place. It actually follows a main character who is a selective mute. Now, I don't know how well the representation is on that aspect. I'm not sure, but she's selective mute who deals with anxiety and panic attacks, and let me tell you, the anxiety and panic attack part was incredibly accurate, at least for me, in my own personal experience. I 100% related to that. And she ends up meeting a boy who is deaf, and they become quick friends because she's the only person at the school who knows a little bit of ASL, so they're able to communicate. And from that, it sort of just weaves itself into this beautiful love story. Having read a lot of the hard-hitting books that I read earlier in the month, reading this one, I was actually it sounds weird, but I was setting myself up for the relationship to be spoiled in one way or another, and it ends up actually just being really lovely, and I don't know, I was thinking like, this is too good to be true, but it actually ended up just being a really beautiful story. This is such a perfect, adorable contemporary romance that I just loved. I loved it so much. It filled my heart with so much happiness. Reese is pretty much like the cutest YA boy like ever. he's so sweet, and yeah, everyone should read this because it's beautiful. So I loved it. Yeah, that basically wraps up my wrap up. I absolutely adored all 9 books that I read this month. And like I said, a big giant thank you to Kayla, Books and Lala, if you guys are not aware, because all of these, except I think Monday's Not Coming, was on her recommendation, and all of them are amazing. So of all of these books, read all of them. If they interest you, read them. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these, what you thought of any of these. Yeah, if there's any like 5-star books that you're like, Natasha, you have to read this, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm gonna make like a master list going into the new year, and maybe get around to them at some point. And yeah, I do hope you guys are doing good. Without making this too long, I will end it here, and talk to you guys later. Actually, what do I say at the end of my videos? I'll see you in the next, I don't know, see you in the next video? Sure, bye.